Thank you all for being here. Thank you. Welcome to the Crossing Over 2021 Artist Talks. We're going to be hearing from 8 of the artists that are in the show that you can see behind me. And yeah, we're really thankful that you're here. So basically, we'll go through each person via the PowerPoint. And then after each person goes, there'll be a short time for a couple questions. If any come up right away, you can feel free to put them in the chat if they come up as you think of them. Otherwise, when we stop for questions, you can also raise your hand and then we can call on you then. If you end up at the end having some questions that come up, feel free to raise your hand then, because we'll have a little bit of time at that time as well to take any questions that come up afterwards. So yeah, just a couple housekeeping things. So this is our last event for this exhibition. This exhibition closes on December 16th at 7 p.m. And then we'll be going down for winter break basically, and then we'll be coming back around February 21st, and that's going to be the jury show. So keep an eye out on our social media and our constant contact if you are signed up for our newsletter, because we'll be sending out information about that show, about how you can enter. We're going to be doing it online again because that seemed to be a little more accessible for people, and yeah, we'll update you about that as we go. And yeah, it'll be a fun event. And yeah, I'm happy to report that we'll still be in our gallery space through spring. So we'll probably be going down in late spring for the renovations, but so far, both student shows are still going to be in our space, both jury show and first year experience. So that's exciting. But yeah, all right. So without further ado, I think that's all the housekeeping I had. I'll come back and talk to you guys afterwards, but for now, we're gonna head over to Sophie and then the first speaker, which is Sarah.
All right, bear with me as I try to remember how to share my screen. Oh, right there where it says share screen. There we go. All right. That'll let me go. There we go. All right, Sarah, just let me know whenever you want me to go to the next slide and I will do so.
All right. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Can you see me? I can't see
yes.
myself. Okay. Sorry about the echo. I'm also just in a classroom right now. It's pretty empty. But yeah, okay. Hi guys. My name is Sarah, or Sarah Liz. I am a sophomore here at UWM. I'm getting a BFA major in painting and drawing, probably. But these are actually some pictures of me from when I was about like 3. And I found them last year, and I've honestly like, they've just been like pride and joy to look at since, just because like really when I was a kid, I was like fully infatuated with the idea of color and like what it can do. I just thought it like really grasped my my love for that very nicely, but you can move on to the next one. All right, so I loved like color obviously as a kid. Like it was very much, I was pretty artistic as a kid, but like nothing too crazy. I didn't take art seriously until I was a junior or senior in high school. Which for my senior year of high school, I created a series here where it says this. Basically, the series was focusing on how empowerment, like observed throughout our society, is linked to the idea of oppression. So I created these pairs of paintings that kind of I felt either related to how I felt this phenomenon, or like how I saw like my peers relating to it. So you can move on to the next. So these were just some other examples of that. There were 10 pieces in the series, but So the pairs are like the top and the bottom of the three, but all right. Yeah, you can just move on then. So basically, I was very intrigued with the idea of portraiture, like throughout that series. I just think like us as humans, like we can really just like create art just through our expressions. So I was like really involved with this, like even after high school, just like using portraiture and like how it could blend with my love for color and color theory. So these were just some pieces that I made like post high school, like over the past 2 years that I've really enjoyed. You can move on to the next. These are some more, but these pieces I think really give a good sense of my like expressionism and how I use mark making really for my just ways of creating. Yeah, so we can move on to the next one here. So I actually, throughout my time here at UWM, I was a little nervous to take digital arts because I don't know, I hadn't really done much in like Illustrator or Photoshop, so I was a little nervous, but I honestly was the most surprised with my like work that came out of that class because I honestly think it like caused the most growth of the classes that I've taken so far. And I was very surprised in like how much I actually enjoyed using these mediums. Kind of just was an eye-opener for me of like, oh, you can use things that aren't like what you've been using your whole life. Just opened my eyes to the world of like mixed media, which you can move on to the next slide. So over this past summer, I got the chance to commission a painted guitar for my cousin. And this was so fun for me because it was like this whole new world of I can paint on anything. And it was honestly just, this piece was inspired by Willy Wonka and specifically the song Pure Imagination. And there's this like whole story of him like finding the guitar that's very, very fun. But it is a left-handed guitar, by the way, it's not upside down. But yeah, this was just a very eye-opening like project for me because it was an exciting, unconventional art surface that I was very excited to be a part of, but you can move on to the next one. All right, so now for the slide we've all been waiting for. This piece was my piece for the Crossing Over exhibition this year, titled Golden Rule. I made this at like the end of August this past year, like within the first couple days that I moved to Milwaukee. And honestly, this piece was created over like multiple sittings and layering processes, like each were a different medium. So that was honestly very fun for me because it was using mediums that I had never fully like given a chance and just playing with how they could interact with each other. Yeah, but this piece was very, very different from anything that I had done in the past. But I think it's very telling of the environment that I was just brought into. It honestly has shifted the way in which I like create art like since August. Just like viewing art as more of a process and just something that you can layer on top of each other. But this piece really is kind of about how our relationship to the earth isn't that great and how like reciprocity reciprocity isn't that witnessed within our society. But it uses a lot of elements like magazine clippings, acrylic paint, paint pens, stamps and ink, like different texture mediums. You can move on to the next slide for those. Yeah, so this is just a process in the layering. Started with just some big shapes on a canvas, and then took some magazine clippings later on, and it just kind of all came together in the end. And yeah, you can move on to the next one if you want. These are some detail shots that I have found to be, honestly, I just love how it reads as a piece from far away, but once you get up close, you see all these really small details that are kind of just about how we live and how we aren't the best as a society, but yeah. So that is my piece, Golden Rule. Just how we should be treating our earth the way that it wants to be treated. But yeah, I think that's it. You could hit one more, just as the title. Oh yeah, no, that's it. Perfect.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Awesome, great, thank you. And all right. I don't think I saw any questions in the chat, but if you have one, you can type it up real quick. Otherwise, if anyone has any questions, you can raise your hand and I can unmute you and you can ask Sarah. And if not, we can go on. Okay, looks like a comment from Tom. All right. Okay, we'll go on to Zita. And then again, if anyone has questions, you can ask them at the end as well. So.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Hello, my name is Zinta Jantrans Vogel, and I'm a fourth year print and narrative forms major here at UWM, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself and a little bit about my work in crossing over. So on October 5th, 1999, I was born at the tender age of 0 in Mainz, Germany. And Mainz is where Gutenberg developed the printing press. And so I personally think that without even knowing it, I was destined to become a printmaker. I did my first lino cut at age 15 when I was a sophomore in high school. And I immediately fell in love with printmaking. You can go to the next slide. Through the rest of high school, I spent hours and hours carving and printing lino cuts on my bedroom floor, as you can see in this photo. And that was the first time I really began to hone and refine my craft. I then came to UWM, and after a quick pit stop in art education, I found my place in the print and narrative forms department, which was a surprise to absolutely no one. Printmaking is still one of those things that I can spend hours and hours on and not even realize that any time has passed. I use my artistic practice to work through my own experiences and my identity, whether it be exploring my Latvian culture, discovering and analyzing my trans identity, or even just documenting the things I see at the bus stop. Processing through making is and always has been an integral part in understanding myself and my surroundings. My art practice is an archive of my life, my thought process, and just the things around me. Next slide. So my pieces in Crossing Over are in response to a road trip I took this summer, thanks to funding through the Clarice George Logan Travel Grant. Me, my best friend Katie, and my partner Reardon all packed up Reardon's Toyota RAV4, which we lovingly dubbed the Ravioli, and headed around a big loop of the Great Lakes this late August. We traveled around the Great Lakes region, trying to experience, capture, and understand Midwestern Great Lakes culture through oddities and roadside attractions. I personally think the best way to get to know a place is through its people, and there's nothing more intimate than people unapologetically showing you the things they love. And that was something that was on the forefront of my mind while I was creating this work. Next slide. So my first piece is a somewhat abstract depiction of the Great Lakes. It's a about 2 foot by 2 foot quilt, and it shows a map of the Great Lakes, the darkest blue rectangle being Lake Superior, the lightest blue being Lake Michigan, and so on. The red and yellow panels on the top and bottom represent the sunrise and sunset on the Great Lakes, and it's a little bit hard to see on the more zoomed out photo, but you can kind of see in the detailed photo that I stitched the trip route around the corresponding lakes in gold thread. I wanted to emulate the look and feel of the Great Lakes, and I felt like in this situation, fabric was better able to depict the ripples and waves of water better than paper was. I love that quilts are used to commemorate big life events such as marriage, retirement, birth, etc. So I felt like I needed to commemorate this trip with one. Next slide. My second piece is a 2-color screen print titled On Christopher the Giraffe. It's 8 by 10, and it's a little bit hard to see the text. So it says, this summer I went to the Jello Museum in Leroy, New York, and found out that one time the children of the town accidentally killed a giraffe by feeding it rhubarb leaves. I just thought that was interesting. And this was inspired by hearing the story of Jello's giraffe mascot that was killed by the children of their town, Leroy, New York, a sleepy town of 7,000, like that's around Rochester, New York. And Christopher's head is stuffed and on display in the Jello Museum to this day, which I think is hilarious and dark, and I just could not get it out of my mind. So I knew I needed to make a piece about it. I created this screen print by printing 2 semi-transparent layers, one magenta and one yellow, to create that intense cherry Jello red. And I wanted to do this in 2 layers rather than mixing the colors together, because I love those little hints of the individual colors that come through, like the halftone, magenta halftone, and that little glow of yellow around the text. Next slide. And so my third and final piece is called Lake Ontario around 5 p.m. It's a 12 by 20 lino cut. It depicts Katie and Reardon building a fire at our campsite on Lake Ontario. And in creating work for the series, I know I wanted to make a piece commemorating my 2 friends that came on the trip with me, and the story behind it of them lovingly and calmly bickering while building this fire that would not start really captures their relationship and the trip dynamic really well. I also felt like this composition allowed me to document and archive the trip the way I see it in my memories. As I mentioned before, lino cuts are my specialty, and I had a lot of fun problem solving this composition, and especially loved creating all the different textures through mark making, like the grass, the wood grain, and the plastic holding the firewood as well. Next slide. So through this trip and the art making that followed, I was able to re-meet a region I've known my whole life and understand it in a new and deeper way. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much, Cynthia. I have a quick question
Yes.
for anybody else. There's all the different colored lakes and they're different sizes and everything. And I assume the sizes relate to the size of the lakes, but what was the choice in picking the different colors for each lake, like the different blues?
Yeah. I kind of went, this is gonna sound silly, but I went by vibe, really. Like whatever it felt like to me was the color I picked. I like had an array of different hues of blues and greens, and I went with what felt best.
Nice. Yeah, what I'm guessing is Lake Michigan, that kind of lighter blue. I do feel like I relate that more to that lake than like Superior, which feels sort of darker to me personally. So
Yeah, it feels
vibes,
like
I understand.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, sorry for, not sorry. I'm glad I asked your question, but anybody else have any questions? I don't want to step on any toes. Anybody? It's fine if not. Anybody does, and they think of it in the next 2 seconds, we'll wait till the end. Oh, wait, sorry. See, I thought it would happen. Okay, Tom says, what font did you use for the Jello work? It's a really stunning piece.
I believe the font is just a simple Helvetica. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, cool. Okay, I think we'll go to the next. Thank you.
Hi, can you hear me all right? Awesome. Okay, so hi everyone. My name is Pearl Nemechek, and then you can go ahead and go to the next slide. So just a quick little rundown about me. I immigrated here from the Philippines with my mom at the age of 6, and it was basically the biggest shock of my life, to say the least. I refused any form of communication with any English speaker except for my mom for a while. But one thing I did do during this time was pick up on drawing, painting, and writing pretty fast. It became almost a way for me not only to cope, but also to connect with others when I otherwise couldn't communicate. From then on, art and design continued to be an enormous part of my life. And so fast forward to today, I'm now in my 3rd year here at UWM, studying for my degree in fine arts with a focus on graphic design and photography. Next slide. That's also just a photo of me drawing a very pretty flower. You can go on to the next one. So Dylan Bolivar is a huge inspiration for me when it comes to mainly photography, but also combining photo with type. He's a genius when it comes to photo manipulation and color grading. His style is just so soft and out of this world that it almost feels like oil paintings. And the compositions of his work are all very eye-catching, and each photo clearly has its own story to tell. Next slide. Another artist and designer that I really like deriving inspiration from is a man named Fabian Baron, who is known for being a creative director, as well as photographer, product designer, furniture designer, and magazine editor. So he's a lot of things, but I mainly know him from his typefaces and magazine spreads, specifically Harper's Bazaar. I think this man is a total innovator when combining luxury and editorial fashion photography with dynamic in-your-face letter forms. There's just something about his work that really captivates your attention and you just want to see more. He's someone I look up to creatively, and he does all the things that I want to do in my career, like creative directing, photography, design, and working with high-end magazines. Next slide. Now, this is one of the 2 pieces that are featured in the exhibition, and it's one that I'm especially proud of. I created this project idea with the plans to highlight the beauty of individuals' culture and heritage. It was composed in a way to make it visually united. Everything was intentional, you know, the way they are posed, the direction where they face, the lighting, shadows, contrast. It was all constructed to make their garments and faces and just overall individualities pop. They're all unique from one another, which is, I feel like, something we as humans feel proud about. But I also wanted them to feel unified and balanced together. There's actually a saying from Mahatma Gandhi that inspired this piece, and he says, "Our ability to reach unity in diversity will be the beauty and the test of civilization." Next slide. I have other similar work when it comes to black and white photography, such as this series called Human Nature. For this project, I wanted to really emphasize the similarities between Earth and our human bodies. I wanted people to look at these and realize that we are one with nature and nature is one with us. Beyond that, I think it's fair to say that we also treat our Earth the way we treat our own bodies, and it either flourishes or falters depending on how we treat it. Next slide. I've also experimented with double exposure photography, which I found to be quite fun. The thing with this one is that I asked my models to imagine themselves in complete peace, surrounded by nature. And then I asked them to describe that environment to me. Tamara on the left side described quiet, snowy mountains. Emma in the middle saw herself in a field full of beautiful flowers. And Marissa envisioned herself in thick woods full of greenery. And then next slide. Not all of my photo work is in black and white though. Besides shadow and contrast, I actually really enjoy experimenting with color a bit more, and just recently with complementary hues. I've loved creating my own sets to cater to the color palette of my vision, and it's something that I'm looking forward to doing a lot more often in the future. Next slide. The second piece that's in the exhibition is called Abyss, and it's a combination of photo manipulation and type. There are two combined photographs, which are self-portraits of me in a bathtub in like completely black water. This is one of my most personal pieces so far, just because it touches on an insecurity that I've had since I immigrated to the United States, which is basically for as long as I can remember. It's about my really dark colored eyes. And if there's anyone here that has almost black colored eyes like me, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Before I moved to the US, I never saw anyone with blue or green or golden or like hazel eyes before. The kicker is that it was obvious at this age that people preferred those types of eyes, and hardly anyone ever really expressed the same desire for very dark brown eyes like mine. I was constantly surrounded by people who didn't look like me, and it was really difficult for me to overcome and instead embrace. The poem I wrote on the bottom right side just conveys that envy that I grew up with, and just really portraying the way that I felt about my eyes for the longest time. I've grown to actually love my own eyes now, and I've learned how to like fight the real abyss, which is ultimately comparison. Next slide. Another photograph type combination I've created is this piece called Chroma. In this, I mainly wanted to experiment with typeface modification as well as cohesiveness with color and three-dimensionality. This is also a self-portrait, but I wanted it to be less focused on me, but rather the relationship between color and the structure of the letter forms. Next slide. So one of my most favorite graphic design projects so far is these t-shirt designs. This was during the rise of the anti-Asian hate crimes that were happening in our country earlier this year, and I felt like I just had this itch that I wanted to scratch, like I wanted to do something about that. For the designs to contrast the amount of negativity that was happening, I really wanted to highlight the beauty of Asian cultures instead. Elements among many others that Asians have contributed to things like international pop culture and entertainment. I also wanted to sell these shirts to raise funds for a nonprofit called the Asian American Federation, which helps financially support Asian American communities as well as help fight against the hate crimes. And because I wanted these designs to raise enough funds, I wanted the style to be something that almost resembles streetwear graphics. I knew who I wanted to sell these to, and I wanted them to not only connect with the cause, but also to like what they want, what they saw, and what they were gonna wear. The left design mixes a few different regions together, like the Korean heart symbol, the Tokyo skyline in the back, the Japanese kanji that says love, harmony, and happiness. The middle design was more of a highlight on Japanese culture, not as a whole, of course, but definitely elements that they pioneered and are known for, like anime and cherry blossoms. It also says harmony or peace in kanji within the television head. The last one was more of a simplistic portrayal of Asian beauty in a more geometric and centered way with only 3 colors. The play between negative and positive space was to make the facial features pop a little bit more in contrast. Asia is known for a gazillion other things with people from very diverse backgrounds, and it can be really hard to touch on such a large continent. So I'm planning on creating a continuation of this collection in the near future, and be able to work with Into the People again to raise more funds. The next slide. So what now? Just earlier this year, it's when I started to really pursue my portrait photography business. I absolutely love creating meaningful images for clients, and a huge goal of mine is actually to run my own photo studio and to eventually be able to do it full time. Next slide.
Oh, and
And when I,
one second, you have about a minute left. I just wanted to let you know.
no worries, I'm finishing up, I promise. When I finish college, I plan on working as a designer and photographer for a reputable fashion magazine, and really to just use my creative skills to make a mark in the industry. And then last slide. So just like a huge thank you to everyone who organized all of this, and especially the Raja Family Scholarship for getting me a huge step closer to accomplishing these goals. And yeah.
Thank you so much, Pearl. All right, any questions from anyone? I think I saw some comments.
Oh, you know Jenny. Yeah, she was an excellent model for this.
Any questions from anyone else? Pearl, did you say that the t-shirts you were selling, was that like a limited run? Can you not get those t-shirts anymore?
Yeah, it was a limited run just because it was through Ink to the People, which is a local like t-shirt manufacturing / charity thing. And it gave you, I think, like a month to campaign everything, and then it expires after that.
But you said you were thinking of maybe in the future doing something similar again?
Yeah, that's correct. I am just hoping to make it a little bit more creative and just raise a little bit more funds that time.
Yeah, cool. Well, let me know, because those shirts were awesome, and I'm sorry that I didn't see them at the time they were available. So very cool.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. If no questions, we'll go on to the next person. Thank you again, Pearl.
I can't tell if my video is on or not, but
It is on, and we can hear
okay.
you, so no worries.
Okay, cool. Hello, everyone. My name is Kira Straub, and I'm in my 3rd year here at UWM. I'm a sculpture major, and then I'm also getting a certificate in community art. And before I talk about the 2 pieces that I have in the show, I kind of want to talk about 2 pieces that sort of laid the groundwork for the ideas behind the pieces that I have in the show. So you can go to the next slide. So the first piece that I really want to talk about is titled Memory of Play. And this was made with cotton fabric and cotton balls. and I cut everything out by hand and sewed it all together by hand. And this is really the first piece that I created where I took an object that I played with as a child and sort of re-examined it through the lens of being an adult. So what this piece really became about for me is sort of remembering to play with my creativity, with my making, with, my life, and sort of giving a space to the memory of like playing with things as a child, and bringing that in a little bit more to, the pieces that I make now. So next slide. The next piece that I want to talk about is called How to Build a Sandcastle. And this is actually a video piece, but the video is too long to play here. So I just included some stills. And this piece is the first time that I really started to explore like the meaning that is found in a repetitive action. So it's also, again, I loved to build sandcastles when I was a child, and I'd spend hours building them when we would go to the beach, and would really care about nothing else except my sandcastle. So I built this sandcastle in response to a prompt of making a piece about the way things were at the time. And I made this in October of 2020, which was not a great time for me and probably not a great time for anyone else. But I was really set on the fact I didn't want to make anything permanent. And sandcastles aren't permanent. And as I went through the repetitive action of building this sandcastle, I found that the process of building a sandcastle is really similar to how we go through life. So you build up a sandcastle, and you build a strong foundation, and you build walls to protect your castle, and then inevitably the wind blows it away, or the water washes it away, or a troublemaker comes along and just kicks it over. So that was really similar sort of to how we live life. And you live your life and you go through life, and then something happens for either like good or for bad, and you just kind of go on from there. So again, this is the first time that I really experimented with pieces that involve movement and interaction. So you can go to the next slide. So memory of play took a object from my childhood, and How to Build a Sandcastle made me explore, repetitive action as a form of art making. And that kind of came to a game of memory, which is one of the pieces that I have in the show. And this is all done out of birch plywood. And I used, oh, thank you. I used a CNC to cut the designs into the box, and then a laser to etch the designs onto each of the cards. And if anyone doesn't know how the game of memory is played, you take a deck of cards, and each card has to have a pair. You flip them all over so they all look at the same on the back, and then you take turns trying to figure out each pair, and whoever has the most pairs at the end of the game wins the game. So what I did was I took imagery from the actual game that I had as a child, and changed it to reflect objects that are mundane, that we perhaps forget every day, like our Tupperware container that we leave behind after we eat lunch. I've also have images of direct experiences where I've been sort of confronted with the fact that I maybe didn't remember something correctly. And then I also have images of things that that have affected my memory in the past. So you can go to the next slide. This is just another view of the installation. You can go to the next slide. So I have this set up in the gallery in the middle of play. Two people are playing this. You can kind of see their cards grouped together. One person is about to take their turn. They have one card flipped over, but not their second card. And they might get a match and they might not. And this was really the only way that I could display all the different cards and cause people to think about why they remember what they remember, and what does that mean. So you can go to the next slide. So on the left, there's just images of the cards more clearly, so you can kind of see all the different icons that I have. And then this is where the interactive element comes in, so you can play the video. So this is me playing the game, and something that I'm working on for the future is a set of game instructions so that I can let other people play. This is where the meditation and like repetitive action comes in. I really want people who play this game to sort of think about why they remember what they do and what does it mean that they remember what they do. So yeah, I don't ever want more than 1 or 2 people playing it because it's really supposed to be a quiet sort of meditative process on memory. So you can go to the next slide. So the last piece that I have in the Crossing Over show is really like 3 different pieces, but all under the same umbrella. So I've been just entitled the whole project, Take One, Have a Laugh, and you can go to the next slide. The first part of this project was inspired by my community art class. We were challenged to make an object that represents how we exist within a community. And I really thought that the cootie catcher was a different way of displaying that, but it works because this cootie catcher contains quotes from my classmates, and every classmate is represented, and all of the words of my class are contained in one object, different voices that all make up one whole, which I really think is representative of a community. Also, as you play this game, you have different experiences on what quote you read first. So you're reading everyone's quote in a different sequence every time you play it. So you can go to the next slide. Building off of that, I wanted to directly interact with a small community that I wasn't part of. So what I did was I made more cootie catchers, but this time on the innermost layer, I had really silly jokes written on them, like, how does the chicken cross, or why did the chicken cross the road, you know, kind of jokes. And I put them in my break room at work, and really wanted to encourage my coworkers to like take one and just have a moment of joy. So this was really like about spreading happiness to people that I care about directly. And then you can go to the next slide.
Kira, you have about a minute left.
Okay, perfect. I'm almost done. So the last part of this project that I did was I did an installation in a bus station. And this was sharing jokes with my coworkers to the level of sharing jokes with strangers in a community that I was a part of. I wanted to interact with people that we were all part of the same community, but I didn't necessarily know. And I chose a bus station because it's a very accessible location. Literally anyone could walk up to this and take a cootie catcher and have a laugh. I'm more and more interested in making works that are accessible to everyone. And also, I love the idea that these art objects that I made are somewhere in a stranger's home and they're having this intimate relationship with them. So you can go to the next slide. These are just more photos of the installation. And then last slide. What's on display in the gallery is the original cootie catcher, the box that I took with me to work, and then this wall of, these are the ones that were in the installation in the bus station. So yeah, I'm all finished.
Thank you so much, Kira. All right, anybody have any questions right away? I don't think I saw any in the chat. Some kudos to Kira.
Thank you, everyone.
Anybody? I have a quick question, maybe.
Okay.
So with all the, because there was, I don't even know, over 20 or so cootie catchers in that installation. So for the jokes, did you come up with all of them, or did you like find a joke book or something?
Yeah, I sourced the jokes. I did not come up with all of them. Yeah.
Understandable.
Yeah, I'm not that funny.
Well, it's fun either way. That's very fun. Okay, great. Any
Thank you.
questions? Last
I
call.
have a question.
Yeah.
Kira, so is there, if you do continue to go along this like road of, you know, work that's about childhood and re-engaging as an adult, have you ever considered doing this in like a maybe a semi-controlled environment? Like let's say you volunteered somewhere at like a school or even a let's say like an arts community center, or just like a after school thing, and then you documented the process of that, and then that becomes the piece itself. Like you can do some sort of thing like that. Like I don't know, I'm just kind of like riffing off the idea of like ways you because like you the I'm rambling now, but the work itself is very it's neutral, but it has direct ties to your childhood, and I think you did a really good job of doing that. But I'm thinking of like bigger picture, like how can you engage the community then, because you bring up community a lot within these pieces, and you know they are meant to be interacted with artwork. So
Yeah, that's an idea I hadn't thought of like finding meaning in things that are, well, childhood objects that aren't my own. It's hard to do that, you know. But the idea of maybe interacting with people and finding out what was important to them during their childhood, and sort of again re-examining it to find meaning is a really interesting one. That's a good idea. A good way to involve more people and get outside of just myself a little bit more.
I
It's
think
definitely
too,
one piece of mine.
yeah. Well, actually, I'll save this thought for I'll actually tell you in message. But all right.
Thank you so much for your question. Okay, awesome. We're gonna go on to Danielle. Thanks, Kira.
Thank you.
Can you guys see me? I don't know.
I can see you.
I can't see myself. Okay, it's fine. I hope I don't look crazy. Okay, so my name's Danielle, and this is my artist talk. Go to the next slide. I'm sorry, I don't have that interesting of a presentation like everyone else. I wish I put more effort into it. But so yeah, I came from Milwaukee, from the Madison area. I went to high school at Sunbury High School, and I guess I started painting like maybe my junior year in high school. I used to just be really into drawing, and I honestly never thought I could do painting until I tried it and instantly fell in love with it. So yeah, and then I came to UW Milwaukee, and I chose art ed just because I unfortunately didn't really have the opportunity to see a lot of art teachers that looked like me growing up. And I went to a predominantly white school most of my life, and I think that having an art teacher that looked like me and shared the same passions of me as me, like growing up, would have completely changed my outlook beyond, what it is now. And I really hope to be that someday. And yeah, so came to UWM. Originally just was going to do art ed, and then I took an intro to jewelry and metalsmithing course and fell in love with it. And so yeah, I'm a double major. I don't know if that'll change to a concentration in the future, but I'm loving all of my metals classes right now. So yeah, you can do the next slide. All right, and so I had the opportunity to do some mural work during the social justice movement that occurred after George Floyd's death. And I fortunately was able to collaborate with a family friend that had the opportunity to do a mural on the university bookstore in Madison. And she needed some extra hands, and we both had never like done a mural, so we just went for it. And yeah, so that became the Tony Robinson mural that we did first. And this one, it was the second collaboration, called Black Sisterhood. And this is on the side of the, was on the side of the Overture Center in Madison. And it just really talks about like Black collectivism between Black women, and just, collectivism in all shades, thinking about collectivism in age, how we are paying our respect to the beautiful women and older women that paved the way for us, but also as a culture, as a group, supporting one another. So yeah, that's just a little bit about this piece. You can go to the next slide. And this one here to the left is called Rest in Power, Anissa Scott. And this, I don't know if it's still there, is at the Monroe Art Center. So unfortunately, Anissa Scott was a little girl that lived next door to me in Sun Prairie, Wisconsin, and is actually the little cousin of one of a high school friend, and she lost her life to gun violence in Madison. So when offered the opportunity to create a piece at the Monroe Art Center, I wanted to pay my respects and pay tribute to her. She was only 11 when she lost her life, and it was just really unfortunate seeing someone that you see around you that often, I guess. And I maybe isn't like a pivotal part of your day or anything, but just, the act of someone being there and gone, especially that young. I guess you just never really expect a young person not to be able to finish their life. But yeah, the next piece was a commission for a barbershop. Nipsey Hussle is an icon and a revolutionary in the Black community, and an inspiration for them in their artistry. And I was very nervous to do this at first, because it was, I guess, my first commission at a business that was going to be permanent. And I'm like the worst critic. I never think my work is finished. I never feel like it's good enough. And in a way, it's comforting, not comforting, but I don't know. I think it's good to never be certain in art sometimes, because every time I am, it's not my best work, I guess. I don't know. Every time I'm very nervous about showing the result to somebody, they love it. So I think it's just like, okay, this is routine. But yeah, you can go to the next slide. And yes, so this is the Tony Robinson mural that I was referring to earlier. So this was on the side of the university bookstore. I think we did this, the date's right there. So June of 2020. And yeah, it was a doozy. It took a long time. And this being me and my friend Amira Kerr in the corner. I don't know if you guys can see her, being our first mural. It was a lot of trying and failing, but it ended up coming together, and it was really awesome seeing Tony Robinson's grandmother come and see the mural in person. And she just like started bawling, and I started bawling, and it was just very heartwarming moment seeing like someone directly impacted by another person's death kind of feel that connection to your art. It's surreal. I'll never get used to that. But yep, you can go to the next slide. All right, and then this is some metal work from 2021. So all these pieces are from my spring semester in Color on Metal. And that class, that class was my first class after Intro to Drawing Metals. And Oh my goodness, I've never like invested so much time in a studio. I don't know, I wasn't even sure that I wanted to take it. And then yeah, like the like head instructor, I guess, of the metals department told me I'd be a good fit because I liked painting. It's not like painting at all, but it's fun. So I guess this first one I did with some etching on copper and then patinaed it, and it's just of like the singer I love, SZA. It's a portrait, I guess, of her album cover. So that was fun. And then the second one are just some earrings I made out of, I think that was copper. I cut copper, drilled, enameled, and then I used enameled paints for the first time, which was really cool. That's how I got that tie-dye kind of texture. And I don't know, I actually annoyed that I found that technique out at like the end of the semester, right when I had to leave. So if I was able to revisit that, I would definitely love to experiment with enamel paints more. And the third piece was a piece like inspired by patterns I saw in like Afrofuturist works and just traditional like African garments, historical garments. And this piece was lots of trial and error. I think it was like my first time in the class that I actually had to, I don't know, like I just couldn't get by. You know, I think every artist knows that there's a level that they can get by without having to really, really push themselves and be fine. But this piece, I just couldn't do it. I hadn't had like a successful piece in the class yet. And I think I just wanted to keep, you know, coming up with excuses as to like, oh, well, like, you know, it's just this and that. And I think I waited till the last, there was one deadline. I don't know if it was before like our halfway critique that I tried to pull an all-nighter and I burned my piece after being there for hours. Like I burned something I spent hours on. I burned it in like an hour before I was supposed to turn it in. And I was just like, oh my goodness, no, it was just the piece. It was that, da, da, da. And my instructor, Erica, was like, no, if you plan ahead and have things going on multiple times, like, you know, it would have worked out, but you didn't. And I was just like looking for someone to blame. And then I realized, no, she was right. Like, I definitely have not invested like any time into troubleshooting, I guess. And so it was a very good life lesson on that. And yeah, it was super rewarding seeing it like finished after literally, yeah, just working on it for so long. But yes, you can go to the next slide. All right, and then these are some commissions from the past year. I just was doing some watercolor pieces in between like commissions just because why not? Like I got a watercolor, like those portable ones with the little paintbrush in it, and that has the water in the tube, I guess, of the brush. And it's been really fun. I make like these little portraits in like, I don't know, like 30 minutes. So being able to sell them for people as like little Christmas gifts or birthday presents is really fun for me. And this middle piece was actually of my roommate's mom. And she just wanted some like an heirloom for her family and something to commemorate you know, her old age and how she's embracing it and excited for it and not grieving like her youth, and just how she was ready to and not, yeah, I guess ready to welcome old age, but also viewing it as a luxury to live to an old age. Yeah, it was really fun working on that. And then this last commission did a couple months ago for a friend I went to high school with, and it's really surreal seeing like people that you grew up with commission you for things. I don't know. I'm just like, I'm in college and I'm broke, and I know you're probably broke, but if you want to commission me for a piece, like, yeah, like it's that's just like the kind of support I guess people don't really talk about a lot. And I really appreciate it literally anytime I get a commission, but just, you know, someone that you saw the before and after, it hits home a little differently. So yeah, that was really dope. His name's Damon, and he's like a entrepreneur, I guess, and like really is like come a long way from high school, and it's just awesome seeing like the people around you like find success and stuff. So next slide, please.
And Danielle, you have about a minute left.
Ah, okay.
Time goes fast, I know.
Okay. And so this was my work in the exhibition. Sorry, I should have got to it sooner. And yeah, I made this first piece like during the first quarantine we had. I was kind of going through it mentally. I wanted to heal from some things. I had never really pushed myself to be in a better mental state. And so I guess this piece kind of shows that that crossroads of just wanting better for yourself and wanting to be this version of yourself that is strong and empowered and resilient, but also having to like coax that old self to want the same. And yeah, I started that piece during quarantine and actually finished it just in time for the exhibition. I took a long hiatus from it. And then the last one is the Afro pick pendant that I created in Intro to Jewelry, which was like probably during the second quarantine, and just creating, you know, a jewelry piece that is significant to my identity as a Black woman, just Black culture, but also something that I made in my house at my kitchen table without knowing really how to use the tools was kind of insane. And I was really still happy with the product, even though I obviously like did not create it like with the right tools. But yeah, I think that's all. I don't know what's the last slide. Oh yeah. So in the future, I just hope to pursue our education, really do some community work. You know, I love mural work, and I would love to kind of start that with kids of all ages, and yeah, I guess just expose young people to the arts the way that I expose myself, I guess. I don't know, but yeah, that's all.
Great, thank you so much, Danielle. And it was a great talk, even though I know you were worried about it looking a certain way, but it was great, so don't worry about that. And does anybody have any questions?
Danielle, I know you said that the Tony Robbinson mural, you said it took a long time. How long did it take?
Well, you had it done in like maybe 2 to 3 weeks, so not like months, but just like the fact that we were there from like 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. for like 2 weeks was a long time, lots of hours.
Thank you for your question, Harmony. Anybody else? Not, you can ask it at the end if you think of it, but we'll go on to the next person. Thank you, Danielle.
All right. Can everybody hear me?
I can hear you, so I think so.
All right. Thank you. So first things first, my name is Oscar Arnetas. I was born in a little county in Denver called Wheat Ridge. I was born and raised there till the age of 8. And then my parents decided to move closer to my mom's mom, and we moved over here to Milwaukee, sorry. And yeah, first things first, I want to say thank you for having me here. It's been a rough couple of weeks, so this was one of the things that kind of keeps me going, and I was kind of looking forward to it. So it's nice to be here with everybody. If we want to proceed to the next slide, please. All right, so I want to start off by showing some of my early works. These were done during my high school year of my senior year, sorry. And a lot of my art involves a lot of my friends. Some of them, you know, aren't in the picture anymore, which, you know, I guess it's just part of life. But I like to use a lot of color in my art. I've gotten a lot of compliments about it, and a lot of people say that my art reminds them of kind of like a Lisa Frank / Frida Kahlo type vibes. So that's kind of what I'm just very colorful, I guess, as a person. So I think that's a really good way to put it. So I usually try to also incorporate a lot of symbolism, and obviously, like I said, a lot of emotion goes into it, a lot of, how I'm feeling. I usually like to use my art as well to like appreciate the people in my life. So yeah, that's kind of some of the ways that I like, using my art as a platform, not for, any cause or anything, but more so for myself, and, just to give props to the people in my life, because if it weren't for the people in my life, I'd probably be a whole mess right now. So I kind of appreciate them all, and I try to, incorporate that. I've been drawing since I was like 5. So when I got to UWM, it was kind of a hard concept of what I wanted to do, because from an early age I was always discouraged from art, because everybody was like, you're too smart and you're going to go for art, that's going to be a waste of your intelligence. And yeah, for a while I did struggle with that, but I decided I was going to go with what I like best, which is art. So that's kind of the route I'm going into. And then if we want to proceed to the next slide, these are some of the other art pieces I've been working on during this senior semester. Junior semester has been rough. I've had a lot of stuff going on, and like, I just want to say that with some of the classes, I'm really appreciative about them. One of the art classes that has really, I never liked painting. So when I got to art 243, I believe, I was a little skeptical about it because I really never liked painting. So when I got into painting, right now I'm with Robin. Huge shout out to Robin. I don't think I've ever loved a class as much as I love Robin's. Just the feel of getting to paint, and just the feel of getting to, experiment with a medium, because I work with a bunch of mediums, and like these ones are digital, but what I'm trying to get to the point is Robin would always be like, hey, and she still is, she'll be like, you could use a little bit more practice with, the way you map out colors or the way you map out values. And I think these 3 are good examples of how I've been trying to, get better with color and color scheme and all that. And, just for quick, about who these people are. On the left, it's Jennifer Tilly and Frida Kahlo. The middle one is a friend, and then the one all the way to the right is Frida Kahlo. And then if we want to move on to the next slide, in this one, I did these during my sophomore second semester. I started taking digital arts with Emily Behrens. Shout out to her too, because I was once again really skeptical with digital art. I tried it on my own and I wasn't really getting the hang of it. But as soon as I got into her class, it really was a life changer, just because of the way that now I've fallen madly in love with digital art. It's like one of my favorite mediums. So I did these for a final project. And just for quick reference, on the left is Selena Quintanilla. In the middle, it's Chalino Sanchez. And then in the right, it's Jenny Rivera. I decided to create these just because Jenny Rivera has a song in which she sings that when she gets into heaven, she's going to have a concert with Selena and Chalino. So that's kind of where the concept for this came. But yeah, now if we just want to move to the next slide, the next slide is where I have my piece that I submitted to the Crossing Over gallery. So I was having a hard time coming up with a concept for the piece, and I remember I messaged my friends Paola and Daisy in our little group chat, and I was just like, guys, I'm having trouble coming up with a concept for the gallery. And Daisy was all like, well, why don't you do something that incorporates music? You love music so much. And I was just like, yeah, I guess I could do that. And so at the time I was going through some stuff with some friends. And I was listening to Olivia Rodrigo, which, I feel like a lot of us know because of driver's license and whatever. But that song wasn't the one that hopped out to me. It was Enough for You. And so like I started listening to like the whole album on repeat, and like I just went with the vibes, I guess. And like I said, I like appreciating my friends because they were really down for me during that time. I wish I could have added more, but obviously I was already getting overwhelmed with the amount I had. And like, yeah, that was basically the general concept, trying to appreciate friends, but also trying to go with the mood. And like, obviously, I just wanted to tell them thank you. And, I don't think the only thing with this piece, and like, I never regret any of my art pieces, but there's just one person in there, if I'm being honest, that I wish I wouldn't have included now that I'm more into it. But, I guess with art, you do things at the moment, and I guess they serve you as reminders and lessons, I guess. But, there's always, a chance to make another one. But yeah, I really just have fun with art, and I like to think of art, in terms of trying to incorporate that into your own personal life. I think a lot of times we grasp onto the good memories, and, we try to grasp onto people, but sometimes we outgrow them, and that's okay. We're all human, we all have different goals in life. We all have different values. And, I'm really appreciative, especially for my high school friends. My high school friends have been there for me beyond, and they've gone above, always being there for me, during this art gallery too. That's why I really wanted to dedicate something to them. And, I know some of them are on here right now. And, I know I didn't get to add some of them, but, hopefully in the future, I just want everybody to take away from these type of paintings that I do is that, it's pretty sometimes underrated to show props and love to your friends. So do it while they're here, because, you never know when the last hangout is going to be, when the last anything is going to be. So that's kind of, I guess, the message I want to send with my art. But I also just, want to let everybody know that it's okay to outgrow people, and it's okay. And like at the end of the day, you don't really owe anyone an explanation. My friend Daisy told me that not too long ago, and she was like, at the end of the day, you don't owe anyone an explanation. And I think that's a really good way of looking at life, because then you stop trying to find a reason to explain to yourself to everyone, and you just try to live life with the people that are here, and appreciate the people that are here. It's good to have those good memories, but it's also important to realize who's here. And yeah, that's pretty much the overall message. And then if we want to go to the last slide, I don't have an art account yet. I'm working on one. I'm actually going to start selling prints and all that soon. So in the meantime, I usually post all my stuff on Instagram and Snapchat, and I post processes of stuff like that. So if you guys want to follow that, and want to look how I work with my art, feel free. But other than that, yeah, it's an honor being here, and I appreciate everyone in the art department. I've been struggling with a lot of aspects in my life, and I've heard stories from other people in other departments, where professors aren't that understanding. But especially with this semester, I just want to thank Shane, Robin, last year's art instructors, everyone really in the art department, because I feel like I belong here, and that's something I've been struggling with a lot during my course in UWM. But as soon as I got into the art department, it's been a really good experience. So thank you guys.
Okay, thank you so much, Oscar. Thank you for your talk. All right. Does anybody have any questions? Feel free to unmute or put it in the chat. Last call for questions for now. Some kudos from your friends. That's awesome. It's It's great to have friends show up. It's very nice. Okay. All right, Oscar, thank you so much. And again, if anyone thinks of a question for the end, feel free, but we'll go on to the next person.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can
Can
hear
you see me?
I think some of us can. I can see
Oh,
you
okay.
anyway.
All right, cool. All right, my name is Thomas Chroma. You can go to next slide. So, I'll be graduating in spring 22 with a BFA in DBC. So that's just the graphic design program. And I'm gonna get a digital fabrication certificate as well. And so I would say I'm mostly a creative, but I do design and artistic work, and I'm interested in critical theory. So next slide. So these were the 3 pieces that I submitted to the work, to the gallery. So on the left hand is Lust, which we'll be primarily focusing on during this talk. The middle is the belt icon, printmaking mirror work. And to the right is the deconstruction of post-structuralist possession of the design process. And I guess I don't have enough time to really talk about that piece, but it mainly talks about why language can be interpreted different, and why as a designer we should focus about that. And when we design icons and logos and word marks and stuff that involves language, we have to be aware of like how it's being interpreted. So for the next slide, please. The next one. So yeah, I'm going to be talking a little bit about my process. And so on the left hand is the figure of the overseer, which I had previously conceptualized in my earlier education. And basically, I kind of made this class system within this within the overseer, and it basically one like fundamental thing I'm kind of roughly thinking about is cognitive estrangement. And just to put that like briefly, it just talks about like how similar is like fantasy like correlated to the real. So like a popular question or a popular thing would be like how does the world of Dune like relate to our world? And so I conceptualized and encoded the overseer like class analysis into the forms of like of a line and a dot. And so I basically have, instead of figuring about narratives or mostly like units of the overseer, I'm mostly thinking about like community and like surrounding, and like so getting away from like individual to like and more to like place. So most of my work is focused on autonomism, which is just putting the pen on the piece of paper and letting it go. So I kind of have that Wu Wei from the Taoism tradition, or the Taoist tradition. So like getting within that flow and that harmony of within God or nature. So next slide. So this is the piece, Lust in its final. Basically, Lust is a response to Dante's Inferno and the second circle of hell. The next slide. So one of the punishments for lust is being blown back by violent winds and restlessness, and it correlates to the restlessness of desires. And so that kind of what I was trying to enact here. So next slide. One of the important, I primarily don't really, I like viewers being able to interpret the work by themselves, but one important aspect is the ionic within the work, which can be seen as highlighted, and also tubes and doorways, and also of course the wind in the background. Next slide. So most of my work starts from material. This is a scanned ink asset, and you can also see or note that the overseer is being represented with the dots in the work. Next slide. So most of my work kind of transitioned to digital manipulation. So next slide. And this is kind of where where I take that asset and then I tessellate it and I work within the asemic, which is just another word for language that can't be deciphered. So think of like alien languages or icons in a way. And then the next couple slides are just going to be like animation, sort of a stop motion of my progress. So you can just keep on going on the slides into like, I can tell you to say stop. Okay, so you can go back a slide. So pretty much like that showcased my digital manipulation aspect within the work. And so you can see warping, mixing with colors, mixing with illusions of death, like shadows, and having kind of ethereal kind of manipulations and stuff. So next slide. Basically, I want to talk a little bit about my other work and inspiration. So next slide. So this is a work that I did for digital fabrication, which is the project of the wearable. So you can see this red 3D printed form necklace that's kind of like this language or speculative design that's more of like translation between languages. And so I have kind of this diptych or this very long carousel post. Next slide. And so one of the things that I also want to that I definitely want to continue is my expressing ideas through typography into like posters and stuff. So this was a philosophical concept of everything is contradiction from Hegel, and just talks about like how I guess the body copy says each human being is composed of living and dead cells. Next slide. And so on the right side, I have like experimental typography of poems and stuff. And then on the left side is post-human design, which is kind of roughly what I've been thinking about lately. And I'll talk a little bit about more in the next slide. And so if you guys haven't heard of Immersive Media Lab, you should definitely check it out. And so I focus within like the semester was this thing called Ontological Posthumanism, ethics and identity. And it just talks about like how can we be human in the world of today? Are we still human? Does our past haunt us in a way? And so next slide. So I digitized myself through Google Jupyter notebooks. So I just sent it through an algorithm and it created a front and a back place, and I put it in Blender, which is a 3D modeling software. And so I made myself as an avatar, as a digital being, and kind of wrote about like my conception of like, is this still me? Is this still a representation of me? Yeah. Next slide. And I also created these thought experiments of basically corporation sells dreams. Then what's like the use value and exchange value of dreams? What is the difference between a dream corporation and data mining? Does your data, is it ephemeral? Is it like an aspect of yourself being mined and stuff? So all that can be seen like on my Spark page and stuff. So next slide.
And Todd, just a quick update. You have about a minute left.
Okay, sweet. All right, well then I guess I'll just try to go through a little bit. But I'm gonna be talking about this book that's inspired by interface fantasy. Next slide. I've been doing these Twitch streams and stuff for class, and super interesting about interface design. Next slide. Been working on this thing what's like called Iconoclasts, where I create symbols and then I destroy them in digital spaces. Next slide. I also been going on to memes, and this thing is more of a post-ironic. So I wanted to thank the Union Art Gallery for allowing me to place my work here. But yeah, it the meme just kind of talks about like thanking content moderators in a digital sphere that most people probably aren't aware of. Next slide. And this is my last one, and I'm getting into augmented reality. So if people on the through the call can want to, they can scan the QR code and then just point it at the AR square block, and then a 3D model will come out. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at right now, and I definitely want to expand upon that. Yeah.
Oh, sounds good. Thank you so much. All right. Does anyone have any immediate questions in the chat, or you can just unmute? Last call for questions. Okay. Thank you again. And we'll go on to our last speaker, Harmony.
So, my name is Harmony Hill. Let's see if I can. There I am. Okay. You can go to the next slide. And next one. Okay, so the first piece of artwork that I'm going to talk about is my COVID-19 Indian Country project. I'm sorry, I should probably introduce myself. My name is Harmony Hill. I'm a enrolled member of the Oneida Nation of Wisconsin, and my father is Ho-Chunk and Lakota, and my mom is Apache, and I'm adopted, so I identify more with my Ho-Chunk relatives. So most of my artwork is culturally focused, and my Oneida name is Golananunha, which means she keeps the songs. I spent most of my life singing and dancing in traditional Native American halls, and competitively, and traveling like across the country doing that, and doing ceremonies and type of ritual type of things like that. So having a strong background in my culture, most of my artwork is pretty much centered around that. So my first piece that was in the art gallery is the COVID-19 and Indian Country project. So I started in the spring of 2020, basically right when we were all kicked out of school and sent virtual. So in the grand scheme of things, Indian history tends to take a very low priority in this country and across the continent. And personally, I kind of have a passion for Indian history. So I observed very distinct and unique ways that individual tribal nations and tribal members were dealing with the pandemic and with quarantine. And so I began journaling, and I began asking people to submit like their stories and experiences and loss and grief and actions that they were taking. And I encouraged other First Nation people to, take ownership of our own history by telling our own story. And so I've basically been doing that for the last 18 months. My experience traveling across the country, and I've also lived and worked in New Mexico and California. So I kind of know a lot of people from a lot of different Indian nations, and these connections really helped build my collection. So what I did was I collected these narratives, and what you see in front of me are portraits that I painted from pictures that people submitted. Not all of the people submitted photos, not all of the people are painted. These are just a couple examples, and you can go to the next slide. These are just a couple examples of ones that were done this way. But the way I'm collecting them is in a variety of different ways. Some are similar, where there's like a statement and there's just a photo, and they're next to each other and they're not overlaid like this. And some are just statements, and some are just photos. Some people have lost relatives and submitted photos of their relatives, and families have gotten together and submitted statement to me, kind of eulogizing their relative, but in a more informal way, kind of saying, what this person meant to them, and what this person meant to their family, and the kind of person they were, and the kind of person they were in the community or not, and kind of how they thought about the pandemic, because I try not to influence anybody's submissions. For example, this woman on the left, Jamie Iwanape, she happened to be she used to be in the military, a Marine, and she also used to be in the Secret Service. And I thought, when I asked her, that she would have a very unique perspective coming from that background, and she didn't bring any of that up at all. And so I thought that was interesting, but like I said, I didn't want to influence what anybody has to say. I just want to let everyone speak for themselves. Let's see, what else? There was kind of a noticeable theme, kind of overreaching, that a lot of people had like a sense of duty to their people, or to their community, or to their nation. It also came to my attention that many tribal members were using quarantine to learn and work on like traditional crafts, beadwork, basketry, all kinds of stuff like that. And so what I did was last summer, I hosted a outdoor Native American art market, and out of my own pocket, I featured about 30 Native American artists, and I wanted them to be able to showcase their work. And it kind of snowballed. Like, I just thought it was going to be a little thing, and then it snowballed into a huge thing. And now everybody's like coming up to me and asking me, like, what are you doing next year? And just expecting it to be like an annual thing. And so I don't know about that, but having that, I also offered, like art activities for kids, and I wanted to kind of be interactive. And so I introduced this project, the COVID-19 in Indian Country project. And that's where you can go back to the 2 slides. And so I hung these poster boards, and people were able to, there was like directions and explaining the project, and people were able to just, submit that way. And so these posters, you can go back one more. These posters are part of the submissions that are hanging in the art gallery. So if they look kind of like out of place and weird, that's why, because they're that kind of community art, and they are like handwritten by, people in the community. So just to give some context to those type of things. And I was, super happy that people were able to contribute that way, and if anything else, get some type of catharsis for themselves by releasing their feelings out into the world that way. So I think it's also noteworthy that when I'm looking at my submissions, there's a real evolution based on when they've been submitted, because I think all of us, whether you're Native or not, have gone through all of these different emotions based on the time, even though it's relatively a short period of time, it's less than 2 years, but whether it was, right when everything shut down, or right when, the shelves went bare, or right when people didn't, really think it was real, or when it started getting into every state, or when it started getting into every, city. And I think everyone kind of started having sort of the same feelings throughout, and nobody really ever talks about that. But through collecting these submissions, you can kind of see that happens in kind of like a visual way. So that's all I have for this project. So we can go to the next one.
You have about a minute left, Harmony. So
okay, sorry.
Big deal. You're good.
So this is my second submission at the Crossing Over exhibit. This is titled Buried in an Unmarked Grave, Indian Residential School. And it's obviously about the Indian residential schools across the US and Canada. If you have been living under a rock, there have been hundreds and hundreds of unmarked graves that have been recovered in Canada. And Canada has done a remarkable job of the survivors of Indian residential schools have, about 30 years ago, they sued the government, and they were able to establish a Truth and Reconciliation Commission that created an initiative where they had to educate the public about residential schools and the experiences of survivors, and create a record of that. And I think it's interesting that they're finding all this there, but none of that's happened in the US. And there's no push for that here because there's such a strong pushback against it. And so this is kind of an introduction to another project that I'm working on about residential schools, but I'm out of time. So you can follow me on Instagram at Harmony Hill Artist if you're interested at all.
And Harmony, I know you sent me an email. I do have the last slide if you do want to briefly talk about it. You totally can, otherwise, yeah, whatever works.
So the Carlisle Indian School is the first Indian residential school in the United States. And there's 186 graves at this school. And so I'm currently working on making 186 rattles out of wood. I hand carve all these rattles. And for many people, rattles symbolize like babies or infants or children. But for Native people, rattles are often used in prayers and socials and songs. So I kind of wanted to especially use rattles because they have that duality. And wood, the material kind of has a special meaning to me too because of its grounding to the earth and its connection to the earth.
Thank you so much. Yeah, and you can follow Harmony on that Facebook page. All right.
Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions right away? We can also open up after a minute or so to general questions for anybody else, but for Harmony specifically, any question? You can unmute or put in the chat as well. All right, last call. Okay, thank you so much, Harmony.
Sorry.
And wait,
sorry.
Go ahead.
I thought
You're
of
fine.
a question at the last minute. So these, you said 168 of these rattles for I'm sorry, I missed that.
Oh, you're muted, Harmony.
186.
Okay. For what was the number representing again?
The 186 graves that are at the Carlisle Indian School.
Okay. Are you I know this probably isn't the only mass grave that's been found. Are you thinking of doing different objects for a different site potentially, or is this the only instance that you're thinking of doing this project?
At this point, I'm trying to go one step at a time because I have like a bunch of projects kind of going at once. So, and honestly, I thought that I would be further along than I am by now. So at this point, I'm just trying to focus on this one.
Okay, cool. I was just wondering, I thought that like that might be an interesting idea, as like a different object for each different instance. But I love this idea of 186 for, you know, the number of people in the mass grave. It's really beautiful.
Kind of a follow-up to that. In terms of, I guess in terms of size of rattles, because I guess here, are they like a couple feet or are they smaller than that?
They're like about, I want to say like maybe 14 inches.
Gotcha. And is there, once, all of them have been made, is there a specific type of I guess, display that you were kind of envisioning, or what was your thought for that?
The way I kind of had it envisioned was kind of having them laid out on a maybe like a large platform, almost like graves.
Gotcha. Thank you so much for answering my question. All right, any other questions for Harmony? Okay. I think someone in the chat said they had a question for Pearl. I think you're able to unmute yourself, Samaria, if you want to go ahead. No.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, yes we can.
Okay, awesome. I just had a question for Pearl. I was curious about like what helps her continue to create like a vision if she hits a creative wall, like a writer's block.
Hi,
So I
Samara.
love her work.
Thank you. That's a good question. Usually when I do hit a creator's block, it's one of two reasons. Like one of them would be I run out of ideas on how to motivate myself or how to improve on myself. And the second one would be just like filled with self-doubt. Usually I just try to stop and breathe and just sit still, because once I do hit a creative block, it's because my mind is just so loud and filled with things I have to do other than creating. And so I just try to silence my mind for a second. And then I try to remember the artists that I look up to, and then would go on like sometimes like a deep dive on some of their work, just to get some creative juices flowing. I also like to look back at my old artwork just to realize how far I've come. Like in a way, also like critiquing my own work motivates me to compete with my past self, which usually does the trick. But at the end of the day, there's no magic pill to take when you run into a block. Sometimes I just wait for something to come to me.
Okay, cool. Thank you for answering my question.
Thanks.
Yes, thank you for the question. Thank you for answering, Pearl. All right. Anybody else for any of the artists? Anyone's fair game? You can put in the chat or you can unmute and just ask. And yeah. I think we'll end here. If anything pops up while I'm giving the closing remarks, feel free to put it in the chat. But yeah, thank you so much to all the artists for your presentations. They're all wonderful, and it's always great to learn new things. Obviously, we at the gallery put up all the work and do the layout for everything, and that's very exciting. But even then, we don't get to know every single detail about the works, and so this kind of opportunity is always great. Hopefully it was enriching for the artists as well, and for everyone who stopped by and listened in. We really appreciate you coming out and supporting artists. And thank you for your work. Yeah, so I don't think I said my name at the beginning, which is typical of me, but I'm Emily and I'm the manager and curator of the gallery. And I thank you all for being here. Again, we will be, the current show Crossing Over 2021 closes on December 16th at 7 p.m. We're working on putting up the online exhibition. So the exhibitions you see behind me is will be scanned in and all the labels will be up. And we're still working on that. So hopefully within the next week or so, that'll be up. So if you have family and friends who want to see the show but can't come to Milwaukee, that's a great way to show them around and show them your work. And also you can check out your work, take photos of it online, and yeah, it'll be a more accessible way of seeing the work for a broader range of people. So check out, keep on the lookout for that on our social media. But beyond that, I think we can close out. And yeah, thank you again for everyone for being here. And this recording will go up sometime this weekend. So if you want to show other family and friends who couldn't make it, please do. It'll be on our YouTube. And then, yeah, if you want to stay for a second, you can unmute and talk to anybody if you want to say something. But we'll finish off the talks here. Thank you again, and have a great night.
Thank you again.